Hey guys, Chris Clothier here with another episode this week of the Grind Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on YouTube. If you're out there watching this on video, if you're listening to us on our actual podcast, whatever streaming service you approve and prefer to use, look, I just want to say thank you. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you listening. I really appreciate you listening. I know there's probably 22 or 23 of you out there that actually are in this episode, in these podcasts every single week. I appreciate all of you. My goal is to reach, I'm kidding. I'm being facetious now with Isabella. Look, everybody that does watch, I just want to make sure again, I said, I really do appreciate it. I talk about what I like to talk about. I talk about the things I want to hear about. I love real estate. I love entrepreneurship. I love the subtleties and the nuances. I'm going to start this week off with a bit of a story. It's something that happened to me and something I think is super, it's got me fired up. Today's episode is going to be all about as a real estate investor, you have a lot of opportunity today. You've always had these opportunities, but it's, for whatever reason, over the last 12 months, a kind of a new phase of the real estate market and the opportunity as a single family investor has kind of shown itself to us. And that is, do I invest for appreciation? Or do I invest strictly for cash flow? Because both of these options are really prevalent right now. There's a lot of opportunity. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the subtle nuances between the two because believe it or not, there is no right way. There's no one single way to invest in real estate. Anybody that tells you that you're, whatever words they choose to use, you might be if you invest for appreciation, they're wrong. If somebody says, again, some crazy thing like you're nuts if you invest for cash flow, they're wrong. You get to choose what you invest for. You get to choose the parameters around why you invest and how you're going to invest. And you get to choose what makes you successful. If you remember back to my earlier podcast, I talk about this a lot. Success is defined by meeting your expectations. You set them. So who cares if you meet somebody else's expectations? Who cares? So today we're going to talk about really, for me, the top 3 differences between appreciation and cash flow, some subtle differences in how you can set yourself up for success. But today, I'm going to start with this quick little story. So I got a son, early 20s, going to be a pilot. He's already a licensed pilot. He's a licensed instructor. I mean, the guy's already at 20 years old. He's already out there earning money, full-time job. Went to college for a semester, but then said, you know what, college is just not for me. I want to be an airline pilot. So he took the route instead of going and getting all of his certifications and becoming an instructor at the earliest possible point. Now the guy can fly in clouds. He can fly with I guess through visual, that's the easy thing to get, but he can also fly just with instruments. He can fly multi-engines. He can teach others how to do this thing. So it's, we're super proud of him. We're sitting there last night. He's got some buddies come over. So I'm talking to these early 20s kids. And I say kids, these are young men. And yeah, it's so funny that they're like sponges and they want to know how to get ahead. And several times the comments made to me, how do I, I need to surround myself with people that have done it. I need to interview people that have been successful. I need to get out there and find how to, learn from people that have reached the level I want to reach. They've done something I want to do. And so he asked me, he said, look, man, tell me, how do I reach your level with what you're currently doing as a business owner or as somebody that's, reached your stage in life? Such a hard question to answer because the reality is I told him, I said, if you follow my path, you better get ready for some real struggle. You better get ready for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and eating a lot of ramen and the ups and downs of I need to make do with less and figure out how to be patient and take my reward later, to sudden impulses of I'm going to spend everything I've got and I'll, take my reward now and put myself under stress. I told him, I said, I've done it all. I've made every damn mistake you can make especially as an investor, as a business owner, all those kinds of things. But, it's what's led me to here. So I told him, I said, you guys are looking at this snapshot in time when I'm a few days away from turning 50. And that snapshot in time looks really awesome to you. What you don't see is all the struggle that went on behind it, all the good decisions and bad decisions. It brought me back to this, appreciation versus cash flow, and all the decisions I made as an investor that were just bad, that helped me to be able to, give the kind of advice I give here today. So I walked them through a bunch of stuff. I'll tell you that in the future podcast here pretty soon, I'm going to do like some of the top books I think you should be reading as a real estate investor, and we'll do top books as an entrepreneur. Okay. So I know Isabella's taking notes back there. That it's because I walk these guys into my library, and I call it my library because that's what it is. We intentionally built a room. We had bookshelves built in, the bookshelves on 3 sides of the room, and I painted it this really dark, deep blue that we like, and we made it into a study. And I just filled all the shelves with books. But I've had these books. I've taken them with me for years. And one of the kids asked me, said, "Hey man, when did you start actually reading books?" And I laughed at them because, like I said, they're 20. They're used to using these things. They use, and those of you that listen to me, I'm holding up my cell phone. They watch clips of sports games on their phone. They watch whatever all these new apps are that they get all their information from, and they just take everything in these little bite-sized things. And here I am surrounding them with real bound paper books and telling them that this is what you need to do. Read. Surround yourself with information. Become a smarter person because you're just filling your head with real knowledge. It doesn't mean that you have to read every book front cover to back. It doesn't mean that you have to take some massive lesson from every one. Learn how to use language. Give yourself a wider use of language, the ability to understand what the hell does this word mean and how do I use it? And not that it makes me sound smarter, but I am smarter. I've got a better use of language. That's what I was trying to tell them to get to. Not, if that didn't come across right. I'm not saying I'm smarter than other people. I'm saying I'm smarter than I was before I read this book, because I have broadened my horizons. I've learned something I didn't know before. I read fiction. I read nonfiction. I read books about I'm a political science junkie, so I've got a whole section of my library that's about presidents and presidential advisors, and historical books about the office of the president, all these different things. I love it. But I've also got self-help. I've got books about business. It was so funny. He said, "Man, have you ever read this book?" And I walked over to my shelf and I pulled it off and said, "You mean this one?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I love that book. I heard it's a great one." And I was like, "Well, here, take it, read it, give it back to me, but it's yours. Take it out of here. Go read it." I'm sharing all that with you to start my talk today because I'm just, for lack of a better way to put it, I'm just in love with learning. I'm in love with, when I go to bed at night, am I better than when I woke up? And not better as in terms of like I'm just better, but did I do anything today to advance my knowledge? Did I improve someone else's life? Did I pour myself into my kids? Was I fully present, with my business partners or with anybody in life, my wife, my kids, anything, Did I honk my horn at somebody because they didn't go fast enough in a red light and flip them off when I pulled past them? That's definitely not a way to make yourself better than you were in the morning. I just try and be self-reflective. How am I? And, I woke up this morning like, that was a cool conversation. I was sleeping on the couch when those guys walked in last night. And then next thing I know, an hour and a half later, they're trying to go out and have fun with their friends. And I was like, all right, get out of here, go. I've kept you for enough. And one of the guys looks at me and says, I just want to come over here and have a beer with you sometime. And I thought that's a cool feeling to have somebody come back and say that. And I told him, I said, well, that's, I don't know necessarily about me, but you're going to be the 6 people you surround yourself with. So surround yourself with these books. Have mentors that don't even know they're your mentor. Read, broaden your horizons. Let's get to the topic and how I tie it back into appreciation versus cash flow. I handed them a copy of my book last night, because the guy, he's like, I want to know how to invest and be a smarter investor. And I handed him my book. I said, here, read it. I said, if nothing else, it'll help you be a smarter, passive real estate investor. And he was like, why in the heck would I invest in real estate? It's like, yes, finally. Somebody's asking me a dumb question that I get to answer and help him out and get my point across. And he tells me, he's like, all my professors in college, they're all telling me I need to have a 529 plan and I need to invest in this bond and I need to go have that, stock in and I need to have this much of my assets. And I was like, look, man, I don't know. I'm not saying they're wrong. I don't know. I told him, I said, but when's the last time you went into your local bank here and said, I'd like you to give me $10 so I can go buy $15 worth of stock in something? And he kind of laughed and said, I don't think they do that. I was like, yeah, I know. But if you told them I want $10 so I can go buy this $15 house, they're going to pull your credit and ask how you're going to pay for it and see that you're going to rent it. And they're going to, probably say yes if you're qualified. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, have you never heard of a mortgage? Do you not understand the use of leverage and how to, why you invest in real estate? And literally he had no idea. I walked him through you take, $3 to buy a $10 asset and you use 3 of yours and 7 of the banks and you control a $10 asset and that asset goes up to $15. I was like, appreciation occurred on all of the money, including the money you borrowed, even while a renter is paying it down for you. And to see their eyes, their eyes are just blown wide open. He's like, why are my professors not talking about this? And I was like, because they, I don't know. I can't explain why they're not talking about this, but they want you to put your money into the stock market and take your 6 to 6.5 to historically, maybe it's 8% over, a couple of decades annualized. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the historical rates are of the stock market, but I damn sure know it's not as good as appreciation and cash flow in real estate. And it's just not. For the investor that does it properly, it's not. And here are the things you have to consider as an investor if you're going to invest in real estate and make a decision and come up with, do I invest in cash flow? Do I invest for appreciation? Do I do both? Of course. That's the best of both worlds. But how do I do it in a subtle way? What are the differences? What are the nuances? What do I need to look for? The biggest thing that I point out to investors today is that price points are important. If you're looking to cash flow in a appreciating market, in a market where rents do not go up as fast as values, because rent is a lagging number. So values go up first, rents go up second. They both are tied back to incomes on some level. Okay, so as incomes go up, historically, prices of assets go up. You begin to see inflation. Higher wages does lead to inflation. You have these prices go up. Eventually, rents catch up. They begin to escalate at the same or close to percentages as prices. So price point matters in something like this. I tell investors all the time that cash flow assets, ones that produce positive cash flows, don't forget, before I go any further, cash flow is nothing but a mathematical equation, and we're going to get to that. But the ability to produce a positive cash flow on an asset today, the higher the price, it generally takes a little bit of time. That time catches up, allows the rents to catch up with the price that's been paid, and cash flow generally becomes a feature of a higher priced asset later down the line, especially a well-managed asset. And look, I'm not going to hide from the fact that REI Nation is the best at managing these single-family assets in the country. There's no one that even comes close to our KPIs and meets our metrics. That's by design. But my point with this is that higher price point houses tend to appreciate faster than they produce a cash flow. And the cash flow calculations tend to be lower on the higher priced item because you're putting more into it. So you have to put more money down. Many investors, they think that price point is equal to risk. So a higher priced house is riskier because you're putting more money into your investment. The absolute polar opposite is true. If all an investor wants is cash flow, all I care about is how can I create the most cash flow on a house. Understand this. The highest cash flow houses tend to be the lowest priced houses. Why? Because they require less money out of pocket to get into it. So therefore, more of the rent, provided you're able to get a high enough rent, comes back to the owner after they cover the cost of buying it. the more money you put down into a house drives cash flow up. So if you make a 35, a 40, a 45% down payment, your cash flow is going to go through the roof. Your return will not. You'll make more cash flow, but you spent more money to get there. So the return is almost going to be equal to if you put less money in and made less cash flow. But it still requires that lower priced asset. I say require. That's not a hard rule. I think that everybody listening here can understand that it's. I'm talking in very broad generalities, broad strokes here, that lower priced homes tend to have a greater ability of producing a positive cash flow early. But lower priced homes tend to be in more challenged areas. They tend to be where there's less demand from the local community. It's why it's a lower priced home. If there's higher demand, it's going to be higher priced. So less demand from the local community. Maybe there's less demand from the owner-occupant community. So you're talking in a more traditional rental type area. You're going to be able to find lower priced assets. You're going to be able to find assets that you can get into for less money and possibly produce a higher cash flow on day one. Understand, less demand for your market. It's almost always invariably leads to a more transient resident. So more turnover, higher turnover, less occupancy. But again, remember what you did this for. You wanted cash flow. So while it's occupied, you're probably making a higher cash flow. Is there more risk? Yes. Investors sometimes think I put less money into it, so I've got less to lose, so it's less risk for me. The reality is I put less money in, but the chances of me losing all of it are much higher. Understand that. That's the first thing to think about. What price point am I going for? A higher price point in general will be a home that appreciates faster. There's greater demand from owner occupants for it. Then cash flow tends to catch up later down the line as rents catch up with values, especially today in an appreciating market where values are going up very fast. The second consideration, the real subtle nuance, between cash flow and appreciation is exit strategy. When you buy a home strictly for cash flow, generally it is a home that is going to, just listen to everything I just said a few minutes ago about price point. It's going to be a home that the exit strategy may be dictated by demand from investors. Where a home purchased for appreciation, the exit strategy is going to be dictated by demand from owner occupants and maybe investors. In today's environment, the craziness happening out there with hedge funds and these institutional buyers, which, again, I don't have any issue with. I think it's perfectly fine. It's created a whole new dynamic to the real estate market, but they're a player as well. So, an asset that's purchased that might be more expensive, but it's also in the ballpark that they would be interested in. Now you have three buyers. You have an owner occupant, you have a traditional real estate investor, and you have an institutional buyer. So exit strategy matters. When you come into cash flow properties and you only want cash flow, exit strategies don't matter very much. You have the ability to, I'm going to buy the cheapest thing I can possibly find, and I'm going to just live with what happens, from a move out standpoint and vacancies and some repair work, but I'm buying the lowest price house I can possibly find. I don't care. Junkers. It's all good to me because I just want to maximize what I can make while it's occupied. And I know a lot of investors that do that. I do not suggest, and I don't know anybody that does it well from far away. I don't know anybody that does it well and makes money on that passively. I know a lot of people that are active investors, even local investors that may have management companies. So they take that, they're passive on the management side, but they're active with finding them, buying them, fixing them up, and then placing them with a management company. They tend to do really well, but they're only in it for one main thing, and that is the cash flow. And then they know that they won't necessarily have appreciation, but at some point the asset gets completely paid off because it cash flows so well. And then it doesn't matter. They sell it for what they paid for it. The return, is calculated on all the money they made through the years. So exit strategy matters. Many people who are just investing for cash flow, it opens up the possibility of going super cheap and you never have to sell it. If you're looking for appreciation, you're absolutely looking to find markets and neighborhoods and pockets where there's high demand from all three possible investors. The investor that is just like you, that's the traditional investor. You've got the owner occupant, and you've got the institutional investor. And the last thing that really matters here is what terms are you putting onto a home. And I'm gonna throw something out there that I'm not endorsing this. I'm just telling you that this is what some investors use as a strategy they use. It's highly risk, but exotic loans. I know a lot of investors that will do an interest-only loan in a market that their research has shown is ripe for continued appreciation. It's ripe to continue to go up in value with high demand. So they will come in with a relative short time frame. They're looking to sell within 24 to 36 months. They're looking to get something stabilized, occupied, looking great, producing an income, let it ride up in value, and then they'll put it right back onto the market looking to capture that appreciation. It's the least expensive route to that. So they're paying the lowest amount of money to control that asset. They're only paying interest on the money that they borrow. So they're not reducing their debt at all, but they're allowing appreciation to go up. If it doesn't happen, if the market tanks, if the market suddenly shifts, many of these investors are caught. Now they're in a position where they really need to either wait it out, and depending on what, how they structure their loan, they wait it out, they keep it occupied, they take the money in, they continue to earn whatever they're making. They're paying a very relative low amount of money every month because they're only paying interest. So they're probably making a really good cash flow while they're waiting. But they understand that this asset may be coming down in value. This is how a lot of investors got caught back in 06, 07, 08, when banks began to come in and reassess the valuations of these loans, and they would come to owners and say, look, it's worth less than what you borrowed and you're not paying the principal down. You need to come in and make a principal payment to bring the loan in balance. A lot of people couldn't do that. A lot of smart investors just waited it out. They didn't take risks that were too great for them. A lot of cash flow investors today, as I said earlier, oftentimes they'll buy really, really inexpensive, what we call cheap houses. I'm not a fan of this, but they'll go in and buy a house that might be, 30% of the median home value in their area. That's a really cheap house. And they might put a 50% down payment on it. They're just borrowing, very little to own this asset. As I just said a second ago, they're going to have a relatively low payment. They're going to have probably a really big cash flow on it. They're willing to take the risk because they know they may only keep this thing occupied and paying for 8 out of 12 months, but those 8 outweigh the risk to them. And now they've structured their loan in such a way that they're generating a high cash flow. It's enough of a cash flow every month, even at 8 months out of the year, for them to be able to recoup the 50% they put down on the house in a relatively short period of time. I know investors that get their money back in 2 years. That's a 50% annual return. But they're buying real junkers. Let's not sugarcoat that. But they're only buying it for the cash flow opportunity. The way they look at it is, I've got all my money back. I don't care at this point. I'm playing on what they call house money. I've got a resident or a renter or whatever. If I'm good enough to be able to keep them in there long enough, then or keep it occupied often enough, then 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I'm making annualized 30 to 40 to 50% a year. They're perfectly happy, and they'll do this with all these little low-priced homes all day long, and it's a great strategy. But they structure their loans in order to do that. A lot of, as I said, buyers that are intelligently structuring their loans, they may be looking for, again, appreciation, and they're looking to put the least amount of money down. Maybe they're not doing interest only, but they're trying to, can I get away with just putting 10% down? They might do, these double loans. So they're putting 10% down. They're borrowing 10% as a second. They're putting the 80% down from a traditional lender. They're calculating the cost of this second is going to eat up a lot of this cash flow. So they're not going to make cash flow, but they are reducing principal. So they're protecting their backside while waiting for it to go up in value and looking to sell in a relatively short period of time. There's a lot of strategies you can use if you're going to do cash flow or if you're going to do appreciation. And then, of course, it's always great to hit the jackpot. You buy a medium to high priced home. You buy something around median to just above median. It's going up in value. because of, and again, I'll use a company like an REI Nation, because of increased rents within a couple of years, it's actually producing a cash flow that is really positive, that you're enjoying. You're not suffering vacancies, so you're not having vacancy loss and maintenance costs. Maybe a little bit of maintenance here and there, maybe some CapEx around year 4 or 5, and then you sell it. We've got a lot of investors that are selling between years 5 and 7 right now, and good for them. Many are 1031 exchanging right back into new assets. So they are exchanging, cashing out, bringing their, putting their chips on the table, using their windfall that they made to buy new investments. And then the original money that they put in is now returned and safe. They made 100% of their money back. It's a super smart investment. And you can do that today with good assets that can, over time will produce that positive cash flow, but are taking advantage of the appreciation. Anyway, that's my take today on the difference between appreciation and cash flow, and understanding that there are a lot of ways to structure deals to get both. There's a lot of risk on both sides. I keep saying this. I use the word smart investor, and what I mean by that is an investor who is making calculated decisions, not somebody who's going with their gut, not somebody who's just out there winging it, not somebody who says my neighbor does really good at this and he's had a lot of success, so I'm going to follow him. No, somebody that is making calculated decisions can make money however they want to make money today in real estate. They can focus on cash flow and hit their expectations. They can focus on appreciation and hit their expectations. Oftentimes, it takes an investor who's crystal clear about what they want to get and the time frame they want to get there. They're going to hit their expectations. I hope you're one of them. Guys, until we get a chance to sit down and talk again, I really do appreciate you joining me on the grind. Send me any comments, any questions, any feedback. I read it all. I look forward to it. And until we get a chance to meet again, guys, commit to the grind. Thanks.